Hi everyone, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and I am bringing you the video of the Sagittarius full moon eclipse happening on June 5th at 1:12 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And I have the chart of the eclipse on the screen. And you can see here that the moon is at 15 degrees 33 minutes of Sagittarius, and it's opposed the sun at 15 degrees 34 minutes of Gemini. So this is a full moon lunar eclipse because what happens during a full moon lunar eclipse is that the earth moves in between the sun and the moon, and the earth is essentially blocking the light from the sun from reaching the moon. So that's when we get the actual eclipse happening. And full moon eclipses are always considered lunar eclipses because it's always the moon that gets eclipsed during a full moon lunar eclipse. And what that symbolically represents is that the moon, which deals with our emotions and our feelings and actually the mood of the collective consciousness, is being eclipsed. It's being momentarily unseen or hidden. And again, symbolically, what that symbolizes is that it's like a clearing out, or you can think of it as like a tidal wave moving across or through the emotional sphere or the emotions of the collective and personally, and clearing out and creating basically an opportunity or space for ultimately the new awareness to come. But first, with the eclipse, we have to clear out the old. And that's what full moons have to do with too, because they're often like a culmination of energy where the sun and the moon are opposite or at their extreme poles. And that's often when we see like in the public, you think about like people turning into werewolves at the full moon time. It's because of the extremity between the solar light, our individuality, our radiating of our divine nature, is in opposition with the emotions and the feelings. And so there's some awareness that happens during the time when the two energies are opposite one another. And then you add the eclipse coming and basically sort of clearing the slate as the earth's blocks the earth's shadow essentially covers the feelings or the emotions, personally and collectively. So that's a little bit about what a full moon eclipse is. So then we have to look at the sign of the eclipse to find out, well, what is actually being highlighted or being we're becoming more aware of on an emotional level, that at the same time is being cleared or is being wiped away. And Sagittarius is about the expansion of our consciousness. It's about our belief systems and our philosophies. So a few more key words for Sagittarius are ethics, honesty, integrity, cross-cultural perspective, adventurous humor, and love of learning. So this full moon eclipse is bringing us to a point collectively and personally where a lot of our philosophies and beliefs are actually becoming highlighted, or we're becoming more aware, and some of them are actually being asked to be let go of at this lunar eclipsed time. And it's very obvious. You can see it in the current state of the world with, in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, we've also gotten a perspective on an issue around racism and around police handling of crimes related to race. And we've even got with our the president currently, he staged a photo opportunity in front of a church, and the church and the collective people in the collective religious community spoke out about it, because they were calling out basically the use of the church to promote a political agenda. And going back to the sign of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is also about our belief systems. So it does directly relate to religion and subsequently churches. So I find that very interesting, an interesting reflection of this full moon lunar eclipse time in Sagittarius. And we can then ask ourselves personally, especially if you have anything in your chart related to 15 degrees of Sagittarius, or any of this, which would also be Pisces, Gemini, or Virgo, then this eclipse would be affecting your chart, because it's aspecting or creating an angle to those signs or any planets in those signs. But you can also put the full moon at 15 degrees of Sagittarius in your personal chart and see what house it's affecting, and find out a little bit more about how this full moon will be affecting you personally. But in general, it's also going to be relating to our own personal philosophies, our own personal belief systems, and it's going to be creating kind of a clearing out or a cleansing process around our feelings related to our belief systems and related to our philosophies, making room for more growth in that area for all of us ultimately. And I want to start out by reading what the inside degrees of the full moon eclipse are. This is from Elias Lonsdale, and he writes about the degree of 15 Sagittarius as a tidal wave approaching. The momentum of collective events runs towards flood tide when there is a major transition from one whole cycle to another. The personal life stream runs in similar patterns. When you're getting ready to take off in a whole different direction, there is first a transition that is both immensely exciting and fantastically disturbing. You feel just about swept away by the oncoming changes, and just before they really get going, the tension, the pressure, and the strain can tear you apart. You want to go with it, yet you yearn for sanctuary. This keen ambivalence gets loaded with desire, anticipation, memory pictures, and utopian visions. The mix is volatile. Learning how to ride this wave is such a great endeavor that it in itself becomes what it's all about. The consummate opportunity to open wide but stay substantially firm and concentrated. Mastery or bust. The infinite future or wipeout. A spine tingler all the way. So you really get this feeling of what this full moon is bringing up. It's not saying that all of our philosophies or all of our morals or all of our ethics or all of our ways of expanding our consciousness are going to be totally wiped out. It's just a cleansing of the ones that are no longer working. And so this inside degree is talking about riding that wave where we're open to new perspective, where he says the consummate opportunity to open wide but stay substantially firm and concentrated. So it's really about finding out more clearly what our beliefs are, what our ethics are, what our morals are. And it really fits with the narrative of this time. I think that We've all been being asked to step up to the plate when it comes to investigating and standing in our own ethics, and what does it mean to be moral, and how do we share that in society and in humanity. Because I have to say personally, even in the midst of this COVID experience within my own local sphere, there have been various examples of people just really not stepping up to the plate. There have been examples of people stepping up to the plate for sure, but definitely seeing kind of where people just decide through their actions that they just aren't going to care how they impact other people around them. And I think that's a big question that we're all getting an opportunity to see and to be reminded of at this time, that we are a collective humanity, and that we do need to act accordingly, and that we do need to see maybe where we might not be living in integrity around certain moral or ethical perspectives that are important to have in order for us to all get along and prosper. So I want to talk a little bit more about the other planetary aspects that are involved in this full moon time. And first, I would have to go back to the fact that we had a conjunction between Jupiter, which is the planet that rules Sagittarius. So Jupiter is in the sign of Capricorn right now. And back in April, on the 4th, 2020, we had a conjunction between Jupiter and the sign and the planet Pluto. So Jupiter, some key words: I expand my consciousness with, I express my joy and enthusiasm with, and I develop my philosophy with. Similar feelings about the sign Sagittarius, but Jupiter is the actual kind of act of expanding the consciousness and developing philosophy and expressing joy and enthusiasm. So Jupiter actually has a very kind of positive feeling to it, and it ultimately does bring good. That's the nice thing about Jupiter. But it made a conjunction with Pluto here in the sign of Capricorn back in early April. And Pluto's all about death and transformation and looking at the shadow and collectively looking at how the shadow kind of operates through us all, and asks that we uncover some of the kind of baser drives or the shadow that that forms kind of mass consciousness, and how that needs to ultimately be purged in order to elevate the consciousness of the collective. So these two got together, and they're going to conjunct 2 more times, once at the end of June, which is going to be on the 30th, and then 1 more time in November. So this set a pattern back in April that this full moon eclipse is actually activating. And what this pattern deals with is the expansion of our consciousness, but at the same time, it's dredging up all of the stuff that lies hidden in the collective unconscious. And ultimately, Pluto does want to elevate. It wants to transform. It wants to transmute. And Jupiter wants to expand and grow and change. But with Pluto, it's going to, at first, bring all of that stuff up from underneath and allow us to see it and work with it, and look at it, and it gets revealed. And then we ultimately then transform our philosophies and our perspectives, and we grow. But again, this is a process that happens over time, and really this year is going to be like a big expression of this energy. And it's in the sign of Capricorn. And Capricorn is all about the structures that govern our society, the structures that govern the political system that we live in, the government system that we live in. So these are the things that are going to be going through this real philosophical transformation, and requiring that we really look very deeply at some of the way that kind of these systemic things that have been happening in our society based on the rules and the foundations that we've built it upon, which is our government, and also the morals. There is a kind of a moral energy to Capricorn as well as Sagittarius, but Capricorn is a lot about personal authority, personal responsibility. So there's something happening in this pattern that is also transforming on a personal level, like how we collectively relate to one another, and where is our personal authority and where is our personal responsibility to everyone in the midst of this society and in the midst of this, you know, structure that kind of holds us all together. So that pattern needed to be pointed out because again, this full moon lunar eclipse is happening in the sign of Sagittarius, which Jupiter rules. And so this eclipse is relating to this pattern of Jupiter conjunct Pluto. It's activating this pattern essentially. Now, what else is happening is that Mars, you can see here at 15 degrees of Pisces, is exactly squaring the sun and the moon on the days, on the day of the eclipse and the day after the eclipse. The moon squares Mars first, and then the next day the sun squares Mars. Now, Mars is our ability to take action, the ability to have courage and strength and do. It is the male principle of our ego to a certain extent, but also our masculinity within everybody, our strength. And it's in Pisces, and Pisces is this sign of emotion. It's a mutable water sign. So to have Mars in Pisces, they're kind of contrary, but they exist, they work together. And really what Mars and Pisces has a lot to do with is tapping into our emotions, tapping into empathy and compassion. That's very much Mars and Pisces. It wants to understand the other and to feel for the other, which is a really positive thing. And Mars and Pisces at times can feel like it doesn't have the energy, it doesn't have the strength, because it can get caught up in the emotions and the feelings, and perhaps at times just feel so overwhelmed with emotion that action can be difficult. Mars and Pisces, especially as we put it into this picture here, because it's squaring the moon and it's squaring the sun, it's creating tension with those energies. So there's something that has to get worked out because of that tension. And what it can do to Mars, that tension, is it can kind of get a little like, for one thing, because Pisces does deal with fantasy and the ideal, where we want to believe in an ideal and we want to believe in some kind of perfection, you know, and we can act in that way. But there can be a tendency in the square energy to perhaps over-idealize and to even excuse behavior because we are feeling so empathetic, or perhaps we just want to escape. I mean, that's a very Piscean quality where we just don't want to deal with the reality of things. So we'd rather you know, escape, transcend, but not, we can transcend through like drugs and alcohol and that kind of thing, but that's not true transcendence, because then you end up with the after effect and, you know, you're kind of right back where you started or even worse off. So transcendence through the spiritual path, you know, can be very useful in helping us ultimately to kind of be able to let go. I mean, that's a very Piscean quality, is to have universal compassion and to be able to let go. And move on, really. So Mars in Pisces is squaring the sun and squaring the moon. It's squaring the shining through our identity in Gemini using our logic. And it's also squaring the moon in Sagittarius, which is our feelings and our emotions through this, wanting to be very ethical and moral, and also very philosophical, and very much like expressing our emotion through a higher awareness that has philosophical perspective connected to it. But with the Mars and Pisces, there can just be this desire to really not take action. Or if we break it down even more, because really the sun is kind of in the strongest position in this dynamic. The sun in Gemini, this is shining our light through logic. Gemini, taking in information, looking at all the information and making decisions, analyzing. So the sun is really in the strongest position here, because the moon energy is getting eclipsed. It's going through this clearing out period of old philosophies, of maybe realizing where we're not acting ethically, we're not acting morally. Maybe it's clearing out some of these old Sagittarius, moon and Sagittarius kinds of ways of relating, and integrity. That is another expression of the moon in Sagittarius. So it's debilitated in a way because it's eclipsed by, it's eclipsed at this full moon time. And then Mars in Pisces, which is not the strongest place for Pisces, is squaring that sun and squaring that moon. So really it's about using our logic at this time and taking in information and really being able to try and discern, because Mars in Pisces could confuse us. Taking action but not sure what to take. And especially if that moon in Sag, like our morals and ethics and our integrity is being eclipsed, it can kind of point out like maybe we aren't acting from a place of integrity, and we're not really understanding clearly and acting from a clear perspective, and that we have to tune into the logical sun and Gemini element in order to navigate through this time, because we can just be getting confused. There's so much going on right now. There's so much information happening, or that we're being sort of bombarded with. It's been challenging to kind of figure out like what is the right perspective. What is moral, what is ethical, what is integrity, and that is what this whole full moon eclipse is about. It is giving us a perspective for us to be able to have a chance to ask those questions to ourselves and ask those questions collectively. But again, with this Mars and Pisces, just being aware that it could be easy to get lost a bit in not, I mean, it could be feeling sorry for others. I mean, that could be one way that the square to the sun and the moon expresses itself from Mars and Pisces. But also just not feeling like you're strong enough to take a stand and know what you do feel and step into your own knowledge and step into your own truth about things. I think that's really where that Mars and Pisces energy is having to strive for, is the courage and the strength to take action towards what you know to be correct for yourself. All right, some other things that are going on at the full moon eclipse in Sag time is that Venus has just gone through an inferior conjunction with the sun, and now is beginning to move away from the sun here at 12 degrees of Gemini, and it's going to start rising in about a week at sunrise or just before sunrise. So it's now leading the sun, and Venus is retrograde, like I said, and this is like a new birth for Venus. But right now she's in what is called the underworld, or Pluto's realm. And so she is going through this time where she's seeing things related to the shadow. And Venus is all about love, and it's about beauty, and it's about harmony and creativity. So this is a positive symbolism as Venus is beginning to move through the underworld, but then will ultimately rise and start rising in the morning before the sun, leading the way with new understanding around beauty and harmony, and really wanting to create a more peaceful environment. And in the sign of Gemini, as she's retrograding, this is all part of the bigger picture here, because Venus in Gemini retrograde is asking us to reevaluate our personal values. That's very much a Venus quality. So again, that would be another thing that you could say is going to start happening, is that collectively we are going to be understanding our new values, and as we're reviewing them through the retrograde time. And then once Venus then turns direct, which is going to happen in about 2.5 weeks, that becomes the opportunity to really start stepping into these new values and expressing them. But these are values related to what we think. It's values related to logic, to reasoning. That's very much a Gemini quality. So it's a good symbol, like I said, that Venus has now made her inferior conjunction, and she is again in the underworld, but will start coming out in about a week, and will begin to sort of solidify more of these new values and these new ways of expressing beauty and harmony in the way that we think and rationalize. And so that is another really significant pattern that's happening at this full moon eclipse time, because we are being asked to let go of some of our perspectives that may be outdated and old. And this Venus in Gemini retrograde, as she's becoming the morning star, is going to help refine that understanding and help us, like I said, step into new values and step into new ways of expressing beauty that we want to then share with the world. Another interesting pattern that's happening at the full moon lunar eclipse time is that Mercury, which is at 9 degrees of Cancer, is moving into a sextile, or will have just sextiled Uranus at 8 degrees of Taurus. And a sextile represents an opportunity, and Mercury rules the sign of Gemini, which is where Venus is retrograding. So Mercury is in the sign of Cancer, and Mercury in Cancer relates to expressing our emotions and expressing our feelings. It's how we communicate. And Mercury will be going retrograde soon, so in about a week and a half, but right now it's still in direct motion, which means that we're able to really continue to kind of collect information, but this is from, and really digest it from a very emotional place. And what this pattern with Uranus is suggesting is that Uranus wants to revolutionize. Uranus wants to progress, evolve. It rules humanity. And it's in the sign of Taurus, which, going back to Venus, relates to our values and creativity and beauty and harmony. So we're getting an opportunity to integrate from a really feeling-centered place these basically revolutionized values that are coming up at this time. And this is part of Uranus's 6 more year movement through Taurus, as it will continue to transform or change and elevate and progress what we value collectively. This is an opportunity at this full moon lunar eclipse time to be inventive and come up with new ideas and allow the understanding on a really heartfelt emotional level to enter into us and help us move forward, help us progress into new values, new ways of relating. This is a really positive connection between these two energies at this lunar eclipse time. So to wrap things up, again, that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius, it is bringing us to a really big place of awareness around what the truth is, what morals and ethics are, what philosophies that we subscribe to, and it is clearing out with the eclipse energy any attachment, because moon is our habits, and also again it's collective like mass emotion and feeling. So it's clearing out some of these old philosophies and showing us where we may need to step more into integrity, where we may need to check ourselves around our ethics and morals, and really help create a new container for new values, new ethics, new morals to be set into place as we move forward collectively. And it is suggesting that we need to be logical, and we need to analyze, and we need to be rational, not thinking that we know everything, or realizing when maybe what we thought we knew is now no longer what we need to know. And with that Mars in Pisces at this time, it's not getting confused by or emotionally overwhelmed by all of the attention right now. And again, going back to being grounded in rational, logical perspective with that sun in Gemini. And with that Mars in Pisces, it's really being able to recognize that we can't excuse anything. We have to have morals and ethics. We have to have integrity. We have to work towards understanding the truth. And it's good to feel compassion and empathy, but being passive and creating excuses does not progress us, does not help us. And that is a piece of this whole configuration, just to keep in mind moving forward, that it's important to work with logic as we are navigating this incredible change of tide, as the inside degrees shared with us, that it is a time where we kind of have to ride these waves and know again that learning how to ride this wave is a great endeavor, and that consummate opportunity to open wide but stay substantially firm and concentrated. Mastery or bust, the infinite future or wipeout, a spine tingler all the way. Thanks so much for watching. If you like my channel, please subscribe, and I will see you at the next video. Take care.